Hey guys, do you like action-adventure games? Do you like to choose your own path through your action-adventure games? Then you will love today's episode where we're looking at Hand of Fate. Let's get straight into it. When I was a kid, two fantasy systems ruled the roost. Fighting Fantasy, those amazing choose-your-own-adventure style books that rock even to this day, and Hero Quest, that board game that could change to suit your heart's desire and was potentially different every time we played it. I had a handful of Fighting Fantasy game books when I was a kid, I still do to this day in fact, and I'm planning to collect all of the original set one day, but I didn't own Hero Quest. My cousin had Hero Quest, I had Space Crusade, because we didn't see the point of having the same game as one another when we lived down the street from one another and played together almost every day. We could play one until we tired of it, switch to the other, then rinse and repeat. It's a good strategy. I have fond memories of both Hero Quest and Fighting Fantasy. When I was a kid, high magic fantasy was my thing. I'm more a science fiction fan these days, but that came surprisingly late. When I was young, it was fantasy all the way for me. I think it was the influence of He-Man and She-Ra. Those two got to me very early. I loved everything fantasy, and this continued in my gaming for a very long time. Games like Golden Axe, Baldur's Gate, that one Dungeons & Dragons game that came out on Mega Drive, which I borrowed a lot from the local video rental shop, all of these scratched the fantasy itch while I was growing up. But the one thing that these games all had in common was that they were mostly the same every time you loaded them up. Sooner or later, you'll see everything that they have to offer, and the need for something new would come back. That's where Hand of Fate has a big advantage. At its core, Hand of Fate is a fantasy deck-building game where you use the items that you find in each playthrough to help you earn more cards for your deck, and those cards can then be used in future playthroughs. This means that each time you play the game is different. The cards are shuffled and laid out at random, so you get a new challenge with every play. Not all the cards stay with you, however. Some of them get replaced as you move through the game. Certain cards are event cards that lead you down a section of a mini-story which is played out over a series of playthroughs. One of them, dealing with a venture into the underworld, took me several plays just to complete a single card, while others were really simple to solve. As a result, you'll find some events are a challenge that keep drawing you back for another play, while others are quick bursts of achievement that make it feel like you're making really good progress. It's a nice balance. The game isn't all about the cards, however, or it is, but not in the way that you might first expect. Whenever you encounter a conflict that results in violence, the game drops you into a third-person perspective arena of sorts, where you fight one or more enemies in a typical 3D brawler style. I got a bit of a Dark Souls vibe from this mechanic because dodge rolling is severely overpowered here, but the graphical style is Hand of Fate's own rather than cribbing from any other game, so overall it's rather nice. Combat is very simple, however. There's not a lot to it. You dodge melee attacks and either dodge or reflect missile attacks. I have to admit, I mostly just dodged everything because it's easier than trying to reflect all the fire. Every enemy attack is telegraphed to the point where you have to be half asleep to actually get hit when there are only 2 or 3 enemies on screen, but if there's a mob, the game actually presents a decent challenge. Essentially, the combat provides a decent break from the card game portion of the game, and I have to admit I did appreciate that from time to time. Going back to the cards themselves, there are some lovely designs on these. The artwork looks like it's all woodcuts, which is brilliant. They really fit the pseudo-medieval aesthetic that's going on, and they do help to draw you into the game world. Some of the descriptions that go along with the cards can get a little bit repetitive if you've been playing multiple playthroughs one after the other, and believe me, you will want to, but others have multiple possibilities within each card, so there's still some variety and you'll want to keep paying attention so that you don't miss those. So that's pretty cool. Playthroughs are split into levels. At the start of the game, the in-game dealer, who is the final boss of the game, who is incredibly hard to defeat by the way. Anyway, the dealer will take some of those cards off the top of your deck and lay them out face down on the table in a pseudo-random arrangement. Then, you'll move from card to card, dealing with each event on that card until you reach the exit to the next level. Low-level playthroughs will only have a level or 2 to them, but when you get to the harder bosses, there are many levels that you'll have to defeat before you get to the boss card. There's also an endless mode, which is just one continuous run until you finally die. That is quite useful for those times when you really want to grind the event cards rather than going for the bosses. Which brings me to the purpose of the game. The purpose of each playthrough will be one of two things. Either you're playing to defeat the boss card that you select at the start of play, or you have a specific goal in mind on a specific event card. You can combine the two in most instances, but I've found certain event cards require a different play style than a standard run to the boss, because you'll either need a lot of weapons and armor, which can slow you down if you reach the boss, or no armor at all, which makes you really vulnerable for the boss. Even when I went to defeat an event, I did still keep playing to the boss, because there's actually no downside to giving that a try. Dying and not defeating a boss won't change anything. You still get to keep the cards that you've unlocked from defeating events. It's a very fair game in that respect. The bosses aren't always fair though. Each boss you choose to aim for has its own set of gimmicks, and they really are gimmicks, which don't just determine how you approach defeating that boss in particular, but which will change the whole game for that run. There's a plague boss fairly late in the game that keeps cursing you repeatedly as you progress through each level, and by the end of the run, I was practically crawling along the ground with my character starving to death and fighting with just a rusty axe because every other piece of equipment had either been broken or lost along the way. It was a damn hard fight, but I did eventually win. I don't know whether that was through luck or whether I just finally found the right combination of cards to make my way through that run, but I have to admit I didn't so much feel a sense of achievement as I did just feel relief that it was finally over and I could move on. I don't think I'm alone in that respect either. Most of the late game achievements are listed as rare on the Xbox One version, which tells me a lot of players just stopped playing before they got that far. It's a shame really, because it is actually a really fun game if you view it in the right mindset. What mindset is that? It's the "oh well, I'll try again another time" mindset. So yeah, I think we can all understand that not everyone is going to find that compelling. At the end of the day, Hand of Fate is a brilliant and unique game, but with some of its mechanics, especially the intensely luck-based nature of the random playthroughs, won't appeal to everyone. For me, it reminds me a lot of how I felt playing Hero Quest and Fighting Fantasy back when I was a kid. I appreciate that kind of game, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Hand of Fate as a result. For a few weeks, it was pretty much the only game I was playing, because I really wanted to get to the next boss and see what horrors came with it. Now, it's become one of those games that I load up for a half-hour playthrough here and there, and to be honest, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's a lot of replayability here, even if you've technically finished the game, and I'm looking forward to being able to keep coming back for another run for a long time to come. And there you are, it's a brilliant game. I think we can all agree that it's fun, it's very different to what you'd expect from a standard hack and slash, and I like it for that. It's got its own charm, and if you give it a try, I think you'll enjoy it too. Okay, that's all we've got time for, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this, and if you did, remember to click that like button, share it too so your friends will know a good game when they see it, and do subscribe for future videos, plus there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching GameHammer Dailies, and I'll see you tomorrow.